And we left up in the last episode where Abraham called the oldest servant that he had and gave him a commission to go and find a wife for his son. And remember the theme of this Lent: stand by the roads and ask for the ancient path where the good way is, and walk in it. And today, many people in the world have problems about their marriage or about getting married. There's one difficulty that everyone has in having a good marriage. And that difficulty is always at the beginning, before the marriage. The difficulty comes in terms of a question: who will make a good partner for me? Who should I marry? From where should I marry? And when should I marry? All those three roll into one big question. Who should I marry? Where should I get who I should marry? And when should I marry? You may equally ask two more questions. Is it necessary to marry? Is it necessary to marry? What is the proof that marriage is necessary? Man does not like loneliness. Loneliness is one of the things that kill people. Let me answer the last question. What is the authority that one should have to marry? What is the biblical foundation for that? There are so many, but I will just give one. Genesis chapter 5. From verse 1 says, "This is the book of the generation of Adam." This book of Genesis is the book of the generations of Adam. And we have been treating one of the members of the generations of Adam, his name Abraham. Verse 1 continues and says, "When God created man, he made him in the likeness of God." He made him in the likeness of God. That's fact number one. Number two, male and female, he created them. Male and female, he created them. And he blessed them and named them man when they were created. Male and female, he created them. The Bible did not say male and male, he created them. That's why the marriage of man and man is an abomination in the sight of God. They can pass millions of laws in the world to justify it. It can never be justified in the sight of God, because God does not go by and is not legally binded by the laws of man. Neither is the marriage between a woman and a woman justified, because God did not make them woman and woman. The next question I want to answer is it necessary that man should marry. What is, again, the justification for that? Again, we turn to Genesis chapter 1. God himself who created man. At the beginning it was man. Then I suppose having observed man, compared with the other animals that he originally made man and woman, he saw what he saw, and he made a pronouncement of that. Therefore, man necessarily should marry. And it was not only God that said so at the very beginning. Even when Jesus came, in his discussion with his disciples on the question of marriage, when Peter raised the issue, as they were discussing divorce, then this is in Matthew chapter 19. Matthew chapter 19. So you have one evidence in the Old Testament, the beginning of the Old Testament, Genesis, and you have another evidence from the beginning of the New Testament. God spoke directly in Genesis, and God was speaking through Jesus Christ again in Matthew chapter 19. Verse 10. The disciples said to him, "If such is the case of a man with his wife, it is not expedient to marry." That is, it is not necessary to marry. Now, that was the opinion of the disciples. And Jesus very quickly corrected them. And Jesus said in verse 11, and I read, "But he said to them, not all men can receive this saying, but only those to whom it is given. For there are eunuchs who have been so from birth, and there are eunuchs who have been made eunuchs by men, and there are eunuchs who have made themselves eunuchs for the sake of the kingdom of heaven. He who is able to receive this, let him receive it." So Jesus made it clear that by the virtue of our nature, it is expedient to marry. It is necessary to marry. And he gave 3 conditions whereby a man can do without marrying. Number 1, he had no choice about it. He was born a eunuch, or she was born the equivalent of a eunuch. Number 2, those who have been made eunuchs by men because of cruelty. For instance, under interrogation, during the Jewish Holocaust, the Nazis tortured many of them in the gas chamber. They tortured them in hidden laboratories where they were performing some evil experiment regarding the duration of human suffering. Many of them were made eunuchs. They were castrated. They were badly bruised. Even now, there are some intelligence network of different countries who torture people and turn them into eunuchs. When that happens, then such people have no alternative but to remain unmarried. Then there was the 3rd category of people who could, and that is by choice. Now, and Jesus qualified the by choice. It is not by choice because you have gone frigid. It is not by choice because you could not find a husband or why. That's no choice. It is not by choice because you have become arrogant. You are educated and you look down on men. You are above them. You can't be bothered with any man, or vice versa. Or you cannot do it because of your profession. You want to get to the top, so you have no time to marry. That's not an option, because if you do not marry, that does not remove the urge to sex from you. And Jesus qualified that 3rd extension, those who made themselves eunuchs for the sake of the kingdom of heaven. In other words, Because they want to enter heaven, they decided not to marry. And it is not just good enough to say, I'm deciding not to marry. Then you have to kill the prompting of the flesh. You have to kill the promptings of the flesh. And if you are going to do that by sheer will, then your Christianity must be very sound and you must be growing in the Holy Spirit so that the flesh part of it will be decreasing. And you must be very busy. Occupy yourself running around for things of the kingdom of God. If not, you cannot accomplish it. And what Jesus was pointing attention to here is not really the ceremony of marriage that he was talking about. There are millions of people who do without the ceremony of the marriage. But what he was referring to principally here was the consummation of the marriage, the urge of human beings to procreate. That was what he was talking about. And God also saw that man, by the very nature by which he created them, they have to have partners. Because he himself, from the beginning, when he created man, he blessed them. He asked them to procreate, to fill the earth. So that urge, the sexual urge, had been in Adam from the very beginning. And the problem that Adam now had was when he was seeing tiger versus tiger, dog versus dog, cat versus cat, with his own eyes, he felt left out in the game. And like Paul said, it is better to marry than to pine in the flesh. So God saw that Adam was pining in the flesh. Hence, he said in that Genesis chapter 2, which I have read to you, which I will repeat for the sake of emphasis, in verse 18, he said, "It is not good that man should be alone." Now, God did not only say what is not good. He offered a solution. He offered a solution. Adam found himself alone. The only type of his species. He had never seen another human being. He had seen other creatures, four-legged, slimy like the serpent, fishes. He has seen them all. But he has never seen another human being standing and looking like him. So the question that Adam was faced with was the second question that I asked. Where will I get the partner? Where will I get who I will marry? Adam was faced with that question. And God offered him a solution. And God said, I will make for him a helper fit for him. Why? Verse 20 gives us the clue of Adam's problem. He said, the man gave names to all the cattle and to the birds of the air and to every beast of the field. But for the man, there was not found a helper fit for him. That was his problem. He couldn't find any. And God had to come to his help. And those of you who have spent 20 years of your life looking for a partner, well, a husband or a wife. I don't want to use the word partner because that word partner today is a diluted word. Those of you who have been looking for husbands and wives, that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about partners. For a long time, you will agree that you have looked, but you do not know where your own is. You have not found somebody who befits you. If you're a very quiet man, you have been looking for a very quiet woman, you have not found. You have always found women who will so put you under stress that you'll be dripping from one nose to the other. And if you are a woman that is domesticated and you're very homely and that type of thing, you have not found. What you have found have been drug pushers. Men who refuse to be men, and they are plaiting their hair like you and putting rings in their nose and their ears. People that are completely out of your bracket. So where do you begin to look? God offers a solution. He knows you. You are the boss. You need somebody to help you in your life, to do what you came to the world to do, to accomplish the purposes for which God sent you into the world. So, ladies and gentlemen, listen to me very carefully. The complementarity of marriage does not end or start on the bed. It starts earlier than that. There are a whole range of issues. The bed aspect of it is the last. Helper fit for him. Helper that will complement him. It starts from the soul. Marriage is a union of the soul and never of the body. You've heard people use the expression soulmates. I don't know whether they really understand the meaning of that word, soulmate. But exactly that is what marriage is. The union of two souls. Two bodies can never be united and become one, no matter how much you try. You put two bricks together and put pressure, they will not fuse into one. You can best describe marriage by taking two ice cubes and put the two ice cubes, one in each hand, and then bring them together and put pressure. Clamp your hand so that the two ice cubes are touching and put pressure on them. If you put enough pressure, when you remove your hand, the two ice cubes will have become one. That's what marriage is all about. And that's why when we marry people, we say, we read, part of the things we read is that, and the two shall become one. But in many marriages that we conduct, or the ones conducted in the registry, nobody is fusing with anybody. Because those who are getting married never considered the suitability of their souls. And if a Christian is heaven-bound, and he or she gets involved with somebody who is covenanted to the devil and is going straight to hell without passing go, then you know that there will be a disaster in that marriage. And that is why Paul gave the warning, do not be mismated with unbelievers, because they will destroy your soul. Paul went further. He said, what relationship has light with darkness? And Jesus puts it Again, in another way, indirectly, he said, you cannot serve God and mammon. You cannot serve God and the devil. If one party is serving God and the other one is directly or indirectly, consciously or unconsciously serving the devil, the home is finished. What am I trying to say or to do? I'm trying to give you the background. Those of you who have been wondering why Abraham should insist that his main steward should never allow his son to marry any of the Canaanites. In days like this, if ITV or Sky Television or CNN were to be around, it will be big news. They will term him as the biggest racist. They will say he's inciting racial disharmony. They will say if he cannot cope with the rules of Britain, then he should get out of Britain. They will say that because they think like people of the world. They do not understand the implications of marriage, particularly to those who are servants of God, to those who are called by God. Those who are called by God, those who are servants of God, they are to marry clean. Clean. That's why it is also in the Bible that any priest should never marry a woman that has been defiled by another man. God said in the Bible, priests should marry virgins. And that's one of the reasons why when God wanted to use Mary to be the mother of Jesus, he made sure that nobody had touched her. And that's why I'm recommending to you young people who are listening to me, if you have not defiled yourself, for God's sake, don't defile yourself. Keep your body to the day, not even the day, the night of the marriage. Whether you are a boy or you are a girl, there's a movement in America now, a Christian movement in America, and they are gaining high currency and their principle is abstinence. They are going back to the ancient path, the way it used to be. Before the demonically inspired politicians in the 1960s decided that Christian was restricting people's freedom, and they permitted the advent of miniskirts, and from miniskirts we have got to the age of no skirts at all. There are passages in the Bible that condemn behavior of nations and the people in the nations. God said they cannot even blush. In their nakedness, they cannot even blush. And that is what is happening now. People cannot even blush with all the nakedness going around. The sense of shame is gone. The consciences are mortgaged in filth. You have to understand. You have to understand why Abraham said, don't take any wife from my son from this place. He knew the Canaanites. He knew their promiscuity. He knew the God they served. The Canaanites among whom he was living, they were not serving the Almighty God. They were serving different gods. And the children born under such circumstances have been dedicated to those gods. It is unthinkable that the child of the promise should now have a wife that will produce children that will be half devil, half God. When God had already told Abraham that there is coming a time he will remove the Canaanites from that land and give that land to the Israelites. He will wipe out the ungodly nation. So it would have been senseless for him to have had or to have permitted his grandchild to be part of those that God will destroy. So take it from me, it was not an idle talk. When Abraham said that, he understood. And he also understood from the scriptures the solution. That God said, I will make him a helper fit for him.